My background, degree-wise, I just have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice.
Okay, my name is Carla. I've been with the prosecutor's office since January of last year. So I've been in this role a little bit over a year and a half now. Before this though, I interned with a different high psych crime unit at Indiana State University. I was there for about like 2.5 years or so. I did my undergrad at Indiana State University in cybercriminology and security studies. So I had a little bit of a background in this stuff, but more obviously classroom setting instead of actual like casework. I completed my master's from there as well and graduated last summer, and I've just been here ever since.
I'm going to go back to our main slide just because there's 3 different badges on there. The top one is just our high crime unit badge or patch. The second one is for our prosecutor's office, and the third one is for the Indiana ICAC. So that's the Internet Crimes Against Children. We're affiliated with them, and we also work with NCMEC. So NCMEC is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Their mission is to find missing children, reduce child sexual exploitation, and prevent future victimizations. They also have a program called NetSmarts, which is what the majority of my PowerPoint is from. At the end of the PowerPoint, I will have a resource page that will kind of have NetSmarts and a few others on there. So the NetSmarts website is a safety program that teaches children that range ages 5 to 17. The reason that 17 is kind of the cutoff is because at 18 we're considered adults, and NCMEC is no longer necessarily working for 18 and older. There's a different program for them. So it helps teach children how to make better online choices and being responsible for being digital citizens. It also allows parents to help guide themselves in protecting their children, and offers a variety of free resources. It's directed towards parents, teachers, law enforcement. There's games, videos, classroom lessons, and presentations. So if you wanted to get online and kind of look through PowerPoints yourself, you are able to download them after putting in a little bit of information about yourself, and then you can also kind of teach your children about this app as well. So obviously tonight is kind of about internet safety and sextortion, and I also kind of threw some stuff about cyberbullying in there because we've started to see an uptick in cases of cyberbullying. So kind of how to keep our children safe is we want to familiarize ourselves with the apps, games, and websites that our children are associating themselves with. These apps, games, and websites are changing all the time, so you guys want to make sure that we're kind of staying on top of what our children are doing. So we want to be proactive, and by what I mean by that is we want to have meaningful, open, and continuous conversations with our children. This is going to help teach our children critical thinking, rejection, how to handle rejection, and how to provide rejection without being mean. And it's going to also allow us to teach social, emotional, and behavioral skills. These skills allow for our children to start making good choices, build problem-solving abilities, and develop healthy relationships with other adults, friends, and family members. One thing that kind of stood out for me within this PowerPoint is I don't think a lot of us understand just how much the internet is part of our daily lives, in school, outside of school, meeting friends online, and even meeting them offline. So communication is key. We want to start talking to our children about safety, whether it's online or offline, at a very early age. The suggested age was at least 5 years old, because I feel like that's really when the children are kind of starting to listen to what parents are saying. Some of the topics kind of covered with your children are boundaries, healthy relationships, empathy, consent, rejection, and then a healthy development. We want to ask our children questions about what they're doing online, whether it's on a laptop, on a cell phone, a tablet. We want some kind of questions to ask them. These are just suggestions, or what's your favorite app and why? Do you talk to other players? So online gaming. I feel like a lot of children are starting to get more heavily into gaming. We've seen Roblox a lot. Who do you talk to and how do you know them? And then what the games are about. And even go as far as asking your children to kind of explain to you how to play the game so you can kind of interact with them. It's important that our children know that they can trust us, that you're a source of information and that you are here to keep them safe. And it's not just you as a parent, it's you as an adult, because every family you're going to have nieces, nephews, cousins, younger children that you want to be able to have them rely on you in case they get in a situation where they're not comfortable talking to mom or dad. For children, the online and offline worlds are interconnected and equally important for their social development. When children ask questions, I think a lot of times it's easy for us as a parent to throw in a scare tactic because we don't want them to do something, but in reality, we need to be as open and honest as we possibly can. That way they understand just how serious, especially when it comes to online stuff, just how serious the stuff needs to be taken. Even if you're gonna get upset, allow for your child to understand that you are justified in your emotions, but remember to stay calm while you're talking to them, that their safety is your main concern and that you are here to help them. So, back to the communication thing. It starts with us as adults. We are the ones who usually shy away from having these conversations. I have 2 children at home. One is 11 and one is 7, and we're starting to get to that age where they're asking questions where I don't exactly know how to answer them. We'll discuss this a little bit later on down the road. So having these hard conversations are only going to get harder if we continue to push them off. So as a result, if we're the ones not having these hard conversations with our children, they're going to be left to figure the answers out on their own. So they're going to look online or elsewhere and potentially get false information on certain situations. We're also going to be missing out on the opportunity to share our own values and beliefs with our children. And while we don't necessarily want to push our own values and beliefs, we want them to develop their own. This allows for that opportunity for your children to kind of say, oh, well, mom and dad look at it this way, so maybe I should follow in their footsteps kind of way. I kind of, in past presentations, I've kind of explained like monkey see, monkey do. If I do something that I don't want my kid to do, chances are my kid's still probably going to do it. By speaking with our children, we're providing our children with accurate information about whatever the question is that they might have. We're, like I said, able to share our values and beliefs, and it also gives us as parents and adults the opportunity to learn about what our child's views and beliefs are. And we are not always going to agree with what their thoughts and beliefs and their whole process is, but it can also allow for us to kind of steer them back in the right direction. If we don't speak to them ourselves, they're going to seek the information elsewhere, which the information can be inaccurate and harmful. Go back to this slide really quick. Having these conversations with the children regularly allows for them to know that you're available. So kind of having an open door policy, and again explaining to them that while some of their choices might upset you, you're still a trusted adult, you're still safe for them to come and talk to. Some online risks, really just accessing the internet in general, I feel like is a risk because you never know what you're going to look up. Well, you know what you're going to look up, you just don't know what you're going to get. So while most children are not necessarily getting in trouble online, they're still going to face the risks of inappropriate content, online privacy issues, online enticement, sexting, sextortion, and cyberbullying. And I'm not 100% sure how old your children are in this room, but regardless of age, these risks are going to be relevant to the children at some point within their juvenile history. So social media activity, children are starting to access social media younger and younger. The minimum age for most social media accounts are 13 years old, but obviously children find loopholes around this. I did it when I was younger, so I'm not going to assume that children now aren't doing the exact same thing. Frequent use of social media is being associated with changes in parts of the brain related to emotions and learning. It can affect impulse control, social behavior, emotional regulation, and sensitivity to punishments and rewards. So when we introduce our children to the internet, we want to teach them self-control essentially when it comes to using any sort of technology. We want to try and teach them to take regular breaks from electronic devices. We sit in front of a computer for 8 hours a day, and I know by lunchtime I'm ready to just be done looking at a computer. To turn off notifications, at 7:30 at night my phone goes into a do not disturb mode, and only 2 people can get past that. So when you have your cell phone in your room, even if you think that your notifications that are still getting pushed through, you're not hearing them because you're asleep, your brain is still associating the noise, the vibration with all of these incoming information from your phone. So while you think you're getting a full 8-hour restful night's sleep, you're really not, because your devices are still interrupting. Phone-free hours and spaces. So at dinner time, no TV, no phone. Sometimes it's easier said than done, but that's one thing to kind of encourage the children and your family. Just one, to have a healthy relationship with your children, and to kind of make sure that they understand, like, hey, we need to take breaks sometimes. Discuss appropriate boundaries and behaviors when interacting online. I'll go further into detail later on within the PowerPoint about this. And then, as I said earlier, children and teens often do as they see, not as they're told. So, talking about risks at every age. So starting again at age 5 years old, netiquette is online manners. So I have taught my kids from the time that I feel like they could start understanding things like treat others as you want to be treated. And if you're not going to be treating others politely, then we're not going to be interacting with them, and we can go sit in our bedrooms. Looking at inappropriate content. I feel like every parent is probably going to have a different definition of what they think inappropriate content is. In the profession that I'm in, I think I'm probably going to have a little bit stricter of a definition of what inappropriate content is. So have that conversation with your spouse or your child's other parent to have that same boundary and understanding. That way, if there is a divided household, or a child is with mom one part of the time or dad with another, you don't want that difference being at mom's or dad's, to have that even understanding. Teaching younger children about pop-ups and passwords, and this kind of goes across the board, younger and older. We don't want to share personal information online because that can result in bigger problems for us later on down the road. Identity theft, people showing up at our houses unwanted, things like that. Not trusting everyone you meet online. It's really hard to make a child understand, like, who you're talking to online is not necessarily going to be who they say they are. So to have our children have that understanding that we can't trust everybody based on what they're telling us. Teens and tweens, cyberbullying, sexting, posting personal and inappropriate information kind of goes with the pop-ups and passwords, and then meetings offline. That's going to be more of a parental discretion as to if you're going to allow it or not. In this PowerPoint, I don't have anything about sexting. In a previous PowerPoint that I do have access to, I do have it. So if that's something at the end of the PowerPoint, the discussion tonight, if you guys would like that, we can have a conversation, and I can definitely share it with you. The reason that we want to start having these conversations with our children at such a young age is because it builds a strong relationship foundation for you and your child. It also develops that trust between the parent and the child, and I feel like having that foundation be strong and ensuring that there's not any cracks in it is going to allow for your children to want to come and speak to you a lot easier than if you're a loose cannon and your child is afraid that you're going to get angry with them when you're trying to have these conversations. It also allows for the child or parent to be more comfortable with having these conversations with uncomfortable topics. It helps your child develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills, and it also supports the child's development of resiliency. Having conversations with your child will allow for them to stay safe online and offline. So the inappropriate content, again, like I said, the definition with every parent is going to vary. Some of the ones that the children are going to kind of come across online are going to be pornography, excessive threats, and violence. And I guess I don't want to say necessarily just online. There's a lot of video games that children have access to, Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, things like that, where there's going to be the threats of violence or excessive violence. There's hate speech, risky or illegal behaviors, offensive language, underage drinking, or drug use. If a child, or I guess I'm just going to say anybody under 17 or really anybody younger than me is a child, it makes it hard when it comes to peer pressure. If your friends are doing certain things and you don't want to fall out of that group, you're going to try and fit in and conform with them. You want to be a trusted adult, so you want to listen without judgment or shame. You want to help by taking action, appropriate action. Remain calm when a child reaches out. Working this job, I've seen a lot of things where juveniles are involved, and trying to pull myself away from it as a parent, I think is a lot more difficult than it can be on certain days, but as a parent, I do understand the being upset and jumping to conclusion and going from 0 to 100 in certain situations. We want to respect their boundaries, but at the same time, we still want to be parents. So that one's, I feel like, going to be a little bit more difficult. We want to help them identify other trusted adults that they can reach out to. As I said, sometimes our children aren't going to be able to have these conversations with us because they're afraid to disappoint mom and dad. They don't want mom and dad being mad at them. So teachers, school resource officers, superintendents, doctors, nurses, even aunts and uncles or cousins or other adults within the family. My children rely heavily on my sister and my brother-in-law. If they feel like they can't talk to me, they'll just ask to have a conversation with my sister. And we also want to make sure that we're going to be kind to not only our children, but to ourselves, and remind ourselves that it's okay to have these big emotions when our child comes to us with these certain problems, but we need to do our best to remain calm in the situation so we don't make it worse. So online enticement is communicating with someone believed to be a child via the internet, whether it's social media or online gaming, where the intent is to commit a sexual offense or an abduction. So a child is being groomed to take sexually explicit images. Ultimately, the goal is to meet face-to-face with somebody for sexual purposes, engage in sexual conversation online. Sometimes it can also include selling and trading the child's sexual images. This can take place across every platform, so social media, messaging apps like WhatsApp. I think Peeps was one of them that is new to me, but I researched it, and that seems to be what it kind of is a messaging app. And then gaming platforms, so PlayStation, Xbox, any game that you can connect to the internet, kids can wear headsets and talk with strangers. So grooming is a manipulative process that happens in a very similar way, online and offline. So grooming is not just something that takes place online. A lot of times when a person is being groomed, they are being groomed by somebody that they know and they trust. These offenders will get access to the children by preying on their vulnerabilities and developing trust with them by offering something of value. They'll entice children by exploiting their unmet needs. I think oftentimes children think they need everything, when in reality they want everything. Natural curiosity about sex, gradually introducing explicit and child sex abuse materials. One of the issues that we kind of occur when I think of gradually introducing explicit and child sexual abuse material is AI is out there now, and it is very easy to take a Disney princess and alter it and show a child and be like, well, Anna and Elsa look like this when are doing this, so it's going to be okay if you do it. And then offering gifts, such as gift cards, cell phones, or something of value to the child. If this is taking place online, this is where it goes back to making sure our children understand that they do not want to share their personal information online. Their full name, their date of birth, their address, because if there is a chance that they're going to be groomed online and they're going to start getting these gifts, the offender will start sending them to your house or sending them to grandma's house or another trusted adult where the child is going to try and hide it from you. So what you as a parent can do, you can talk to your child about these types of relationships, make sure that they kind of understand what a healthy relationship is and what an unhealthy relationship looks like. Have rules in place about meeting friends online, and explain to your child why these rules are in place. So whether you agree that a child can meet another person offline, have stipulations in place. Another adult needs to be there. You need to have met this child first. If they're going to meet offline, have them be at your home. Make sure that you know who your child's friends are friends with. And stay away from the strangers online or stranger danger. That's kind of something that's being gone away from. And I think it's starting to be more of like an unsafe adult versus a safe adult, or safe person, unsafe person. Ensure that your child knows the warning signs. Talk to them about what grooming is and the ways that people may try to manipulate them. If you suspect that your child is engaging in inappropriate conversations and relationships online, you can call local law enforcement and have a conversation with them, and they can kind of take you down the correct steps and the right path as to what you need to do. File a report with the website that these conversations or actions are being taken place on, and you can also report it to the cybertip online, or cybertipline.org, and I'll go into more depth onto what that is. That's where NAGMIT comes into play and kind of how we start with the cyber tips. So to go back to the grooming and talking to strangers online, this is Alicia. Alex and I have actually had the pleasure of meeting Alicia. She is the first widely reported internet-related child abduction victim, and that happened to her when she was 13 years old, and it happened on New Year's Eve in 2001. So, she was kidnapped outside of her Pittsburgh home. The internet was new around that time. Me growing up, I don't want to age anybody in here. I don't want to make assumptions, but I grew up as the internet was being developed. So about that time frame, Alicia was as well. So parents don't really know anything about the internet. It's just something to put your kids in front of and allow for them to talk with their friends or learn new things. So Alicia actually started speaking to somebody who she thought was a nice person. Turns out he was actually a 38-year-old man, and he was grooming her. They had made arrangements to meet outside of her house. She left dinner. She tried to tell mom and dad she wasn't feeling good. She was going to go lay down, take a nap. Instead, she left her house. She got outside, took a few steps away from her house, got a gut feeling that she needed to turn back around and go back inside, but the 38-year-old predator actually grabbed her instead. He took her to Herndon, Virginia, where she was held captive in his basement. He had her chained by the neck, where she was sexually assaulted, and she was tortured via live stream. And the FBI had actually received a tip about this because the individual just happened upon the live stream. So she was actually rescued from under the suspect's bed. She barricaded herself under there because she thought the predator was coming back to kill her. And because she is going around to different schools in different states and having these conversations with students and parents as to why they need to promote internet safety and how they need to keep their children safe online. So she's actually pushed and worked with the is it the federal government through Alicia's law?
Multiple different states.
Yeah, which provides state funding to law enforcement who help target online predators, kind of help capture them and make sure that this doesn't happen again. So she has two different websites. Up here is aliciaproject.org and aliciakozak.com. That will go further into depth about her situation and how she's overcome it and how now she is making it something that she can promote as to why children in the internet need to be a lot more monitored than what we probably do at this point. We're going to kind of talk about sextortion now. Sextortion is a form of exploitation where the child or the children are threatened or blackmailed, most often with the possibility of sharing with the public a nude or sexual image of them by a person who demands additional sexual content, sexual activity, or money from the child. This can occur when a child shared an image with someone that they thought they knew or they trusted. In many cases, they're actually targeted by an individual that they met online who obtained a sexual image from the child through deceit, coercion, or some other method. And unfortunately, it's actually teenage boys who have the most common targets on their back when it comes to sextortion cases. So what we can do and not do as parents, or have the conversations and make sure our children understand of what not to do. We don't want to comply with these demands because complying is not a guarantee that the demands will actually stop and the offender may actually demand more money or more whatever their original request was. We also do not want to delete the account because by deleting the account, we're going to be deleting evidence that can be helpful in catching the offender. But what we can do is report it to the website and application, report it to the cyber tip line, and also report it to our local law enforcement to make sure that we can get ahead of the offender to make sure that they're not doing this to any other person. This is Jordan DeMay. He actually committed suicide March 25th, 2022 as a result of sextortion. He thought he was speaking to a girl online who was about his age, and it actually turned out that it wasn't a female at all, and the person actually didn't exist here in the United States, that they were located in Nigeria. The demand was that he needed to pay money to keep his intimate images secret. So $1,000 was requested. He didn't want to have a conversation with his mom or dad. He was a star football player. He didn't want to embarrass them. So $300 was all that he could come up with. When he couldn't come up with the remainder of the money, the suspects pushed him to take his own life, and he ended up leaving a note for his parents and explained why he did it. He was embarrassed that this had happened to him, and he was afraid that had this gotten out, it was an embarrassed family name, and he didn't want that to happen. So he actually committed suicide just 6 hours after the demands began, and he actually ended up dying of suicide by a self-inflicted gunshot. They ended up finding out that Samuel and Samson Ogochi of Lagos, Nigeria, were the two people that were behind this. And I actually looked into it today just to have a better idea of what ended up happening to him. Those two were actually only sentenced to 210 months in prison. And I am not 100% sure what prison looks like in Nigeria, so me personally don't feel like 210 months is sufficient. And then after the 210 months, they got 5 years on probation. Cyberbullying, just as it sounds like, bullying that takes place online. Through any sort of technology, cell phone, social media, online gaming. This can be seen as sending threatening or harassing text messages, photoshopping images to embarrass a person, creating fake profiles to post hurtful things, or posting or resharing pictures with the intent to humiliate somebody. Some symptoms of cyberbullying would be withdrawal from friends and family, becoming uneasy about going to school, limiting or discontinuing use of technology, and acting strange when receiving emails or text messages. Oftentimes, cyberbullying, and I have seen when it comes to cases that I work, they have started becoming younger and younger. The first case that I had actually worked with, the kid was 14 years old, and the cyberbullying had just gotten too much for him and he took his own life. As I said earlier, we're starting to see more and more AI where we can take an image and we can alter it to make it look a certain way, whether it's for grooming or for personal use. So AI is computer generated or altered images, videos, audio, and text based off of user requests or prompts. This can be done by sending a picture into an app or a website and requesting exactly what it is that you want done to these images. I don't think Photoshop is used nearly as much as what it was. It's just easier to use these apps because they're less likely to be traced as to who's doing it and how. This is also a way where children are being sexually exploited and is also being used to create child sex abuse material. It depicts children engaging in sexually explicit conduct and nude images of childlike content. More than 7,000 child sexual exploitation reports have been received over the past 2 years, and these numbers are expected to grow. This is part of the reason I push to keep your children, like their pictures, off of the internet, because any stranger can log in to any social media, and if your stuff is set to public, they can save your children's pictures, they can save your pictures, and then they can do whatever it is that they want to it. It also makes it difficult when you see major stores, Target, Macy's, Kohl's, that have children in swimsuits or just children posted online showing off their clothing, their shoes, or what may have you. And they're just easily altered based off of apps that you can download or you can request. So what we can do as parents with any sort of technology is install parental controls, which allows for you to monitor activities, limit screen time, place restrictions, so age-appropriate content, explicit content, purchases and downloads. I know Amazon has kid-specific tablets that you can set to a certain age range, and you can set very strict restrictions in place that prevent your child from doing stuff and having to ask a lot of permissions to be able to download certain things, view certain apps and websites. So Apple has parental controls. Android does too, already installed on the device. It's just a matter of going through and setting it up and figuring it out and how you want to have it set. So iOS parental controls allows for you to set screen time, so content, privacy restrictions, app store purchases, explicit content. It also allows for you to disable intelligence in Siri. The more updates that Apple pushes out, the more features that Apple develops for the user. So it just makes it a lot harder, especially when children want the newest and best iPhone that there is out there. It also allows for you to put restrictions on the Game Center so they can't download certain apps, so they have to ask permission. One nice thing about what Apple has done is the communication safety. So if they think that there's too much skin shown or they believe the person in the image is underage, it'll automatically send a blurred nude, like, not the blurred nude, it'll blur the image and it'll tell you, hey, are you sure you want to view this? That doesn't have to be enabled. I think Apple already automatically enables it, but you can put further restrictions on the device as under the parental controls, which also goes with the sensitive content warning. And I believe that's not just images, it can also be certain ways that texts are worded. It also offers ways to get help. So if an inappropriate text message comes through that it could be soliciting or it could be a cyberbullying thing, it will ask you if you feel safe or if you need help, and it'll name certain ways on how you can get help. And under 13 years old, a screen time passcode is required. Android parental controls are similar. They have Google Family Link, which is the kite right here. It allows for you to manage your child's Google account. And it's not just Samsung or Android devices. It can also just be if they have a Gmail or a Google email. It allows for you to limit or block access to apps, view child's activities and screen time limits. It also allows the digital well-being and parental controls feature. which sets maturity level of apps, games in the Play Store into place a PIN, which would be required for purchases. One of the parental control apps that I encourage and I've researched quite a bit is the Bark. You can either download the app, there is a monthly or annual subscription for it, or you can buy a Bark phone, a Bark watch, and there's Bark Home. The Bark Home is like a Wi-Fi router or extender, so even some of the newer routers, you can pause your internet, or you can disconnect certain phones or devices. That's what Bark Home is. And then the Bark app is compatible with iOS, Android, Amazon Fire, laptops, computers, and Chromebooks. So if you were to download the app, any of these devices that you may have that your child has access to, you're able to install it on that device, and it allows for you to manage screen time, set app time limits, track locations, block websites and apps. If they want to have a conversation with somebody who is not a contact in their phone or is not an authorized contact, then you guys have the authorization to say yes or to say no. And they're also not allowed to delete their text without getting an okay from your device or the main device who operates it. It also, for older children, allows driving mode. So you can go through and you can disable their phone and certain features while they're driving, so you don't have to worry about them actually using their phone or being distracted while driving. And then these are the resources that I was talking about. So the cyber tip line is where anybody who feels that somebody under the age of 17 who is being sexually exploited or sexually abused, it doesn't have to be online, it can be in person as well. If your child comes to you and says that their friend told them that somebody within their house is taking pictures of them inappropriately, touching them inappropriately, if you don't feel comfortable going to law enforcement, you can report it on the cyber tip line, and then NCMEC will then take it from there and contact the local agency or whoever it is within that county who is ICAC affiliated to get the ball rolling. I would still suggest contacting your local law enforcement, because that's going to be the quickest way to get the ball rolling for somebody to get on top of it and put a stop to it. Take it down is for 17 and under. If there's an inappropriate picture that was uploaded online, if you go to takeitdown.ncmic.org, there's steps that can be followed that NCMIC will do their best to get the image taken offline completely, not just from one single app. They have hash numbers that they will follow and make sure that it's not, if it got uploaded to TikTok or to Twitter, they'll run that hash match and make sure that it is taken offline completely. There is also a website for 18 and older. I can't think of what it is off the top of my head, but I believe that if you go to the ncmic.org/is your sexual explicit content out here or out there, it'll also have a website for those who are 18 and older. But I guess it didn't have the net smarts on here. As a parent, if you want to revisit the PowerPoint that's similar to this, or look at any of the other resources available, netsmarts.org, I believe. Let me go back to. In the bottom of NetSmarts here in the bottom corner is the website that you'll want to visit. And like I said, on that website, there's PowerPoints, presentations, resources for parents. Even if you don't want to sit there with your child and go through all this stuff with them, there are games and activities that you can have your child play, and it'll prompt them. We actually had an email sent to us that kind of explained the sextortion thing, that allows for them to follow prompts on should you do this, should you not do this, and what the outcome or consequences of your choices are going to end up being. So that's all I have for my part. Are there any comments or concerns?
Tap it up for the parents in the room, and I guess the administrators as well. Want to review what is, I think, what we're hearing about on Monday, so they're aware of obviously different situations.
The children on Monday are gonna hear pretty much the same thing. You look on I probably will not discuss Alicia or the young boy who committed suicide, just because I feel like that could be a little bit traumatizing for them. I do feel like it pushes what I'm trying to talk and get across the board to them, but depending on the age range will depend on how they receive it. So I have usually kept that out. I will talk to them about sexting. I do have junior high and high school presentations, so they're slightly different. And I can talk with you at the conclusion to see where you're at on your opinion on if you would rather we do two separate or one presentation across the board as to what I present. And then we'll still have Roger's stuff in here too. If there's anything that you feel that I shouldn't discuss that was discussed tonight, feel free to have a conversation with me and we can discuss it as to whether or not it should be included or removed from the presentation. I don't want parents to be uncomfortable with what's being presented or be upset with what children might come home and say, this is what I learned about at school today.
I have something for you. I teach digital citizenship for our 7th graders. It would be very beneficial if you could really focus on the cell phone habits.
In my presentations directed more towards the students, I do have a lot of cell phone habits discussed, especially having the phone in the bedroom and kind of and more app related stuff discussed in there. Unfortunately, when it comes to apps, even if mom and dad say no, you can't have this app on your phone, most of these apps can be visited through the website, or they'll just borrow their friends' phones and access it that way. But on Monday, I will discuss more cell phone habits and explain to them that what they think might be gone when it comes to apps is actually not gone.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I think we're only going to, what, Chief Page, 7:30? So I'm gonna go fairly quick. This is normally an hour presentation. I'm gonna make it somewhat informal. If you have a question, shout it out, raise your hand. Whatever you wanna do. So this is K9 Rider. I'm Alex Burns. I'm a deputy prosecutor. You're probably like, why does the deputy prosecutor have a dog? Well, we'll get into that a little bit, but basically I kind of just lucked into it, and I've been doing it full-time in addition to my court docket for the last 2 years. So this is Roger and I here. We get to do a lot of cool training. This is at Saskatchewan. Behind us is the mock-up of some of the Lawton compound, and the Navy SEALs trained on before they went and executed that operation. So pretty cool. We get to go do fun stuff like that. All right. Anyone know who this is? And I put some clues in the background. Anyone? Jared Fogle. So Jared Fogle, also known as the Subway Guy, in I believe 2016, Jared, as the culmination of an operation by IMPD and the FBI, was arrested for what we used to call child porn. Now we call it CSAM, child sex abuse material. And when they searched his house, Roger's trainer, Todd Jordan, has a training facility in New Palestine, just south of Indianapolis. He trained up one of his dogs to smell out flash drives. He trained arson dogs for his career. He trained a dog to smell flash drives. They worked the dog on the house, and the dog found a device that was hidden. So it kind of took off from there. It's not a well-known thing, anyone heard of electronic storage detection canine before this evening? So it's really not a well-known thing. We are very fortunate. There are 7 in Indiana. We're fortunate to have a lot, probably because the trainers here, and there's only about 250 in the entire world. So it's definitely a new thing. It's really taken off lately.
So here's Todd and his canine bear who we trained up, going in or coming out of both.
So a lot of people, the first question is, how does your dog smell pornography? Well, the dog doesn't smell pornography. The dog doesn't know what pornography is, right? The dog does know the chemical odor that is sprayed onto your chips. Basically, anything that has flash storage has a chemical called triphenylphosphate or TPPO. And what it is, it's an explosive catalyst, but also what it is, for our purposes, it is a fire protecting heat mitigation chemical. So if you're on your phone a lot, your phone starts warming up. If you plug a flash drive into a computer and the flash drive is really working, you got a big file in there, whatever, or playing videos, whatever, it starts heating up. So that is the chemical odor that Roger is sourcing, and we use him for a lot of these NICMIC type, these child abuse type cases. That was his original purpose, and we'll talk about what his purpose has kind of evolved to here. So to understand what Roger does, you have to understand how his nose and his olfactory senses, how that's translated into his brain. It's certainly different than ours. So I'm a deputy prosecutor. Oftentimes I have to do what's called a motion to suppress in front of a judge, where a defense attorney files something and says, hey, this traffic stop was no good, and furthermore, this dog that supposedly alerted on this car, well, that's no good either. So the way that I explain it to a judge is when a dog smells something, a dog is smelling what we smell. So take an apple pie, for example. Everyone knows the odor of an apple pie, you know, the cartoon with the, everyone knows the odor, right? The dog knows that odor too. He smells an apple pie. The dog, though, when he smells that, his brain translates that odor into all the different compounds within that apple pie. So that dog, not only is he smelling the pie, he's smelling the flour, the sugar, the butter, the apples. And his mind is able to separate those. So when people talk about, you know, hiding drugs or hiding whatever in food or in coffee or something like that, it doesn't fool the dog. It may fool the handler, but it's not going to fool the dog because their brain is able to separate those odors. So what does Roger do? We talked a little bit about that being used in CSAM cases. Can anyone think of any other type of case we may use Roger on? So there's a lot. We have used him in searching secure areas like community corrections, jails, where people are not allowed to have electronic devices other than those devices that are monitored and approved. We've also used him to find phones that were either thrown from a vehicle during a fatal crash, or we've used him to find phones that were belonged to someone who was lost or missing. So we may happens a lot on Purdue campus. Purdue student gets drunk or has a medical issue, whatever. They go out into a wooded area, and the last thing we have is a 400 by 400 yard phone tank. So we can take Roger out there, and he can source that odor of that TPPO in that phone in an outdoor area, and it's a lot more effective outside sometimes because there's not competing odors. In this room, we have a bunch of competing odors that may throw him off. He's really just looking for small hidden devices, but there is a lot of airflow and there's competing odors in here, so outside it's very helpful. Another common reason that we use him is most of our criminals have multiple phones. They have a phone that may be their clean phone, and then they have a phone that they're going to have an app that you should certainly be aware of as well. It's called Telegram. Essentially, it is you have to be invited in by someone in the group. It is encrypted. It's from Ukraine, so they don't respond to our search warrants or our subpoenas. And it's essentially an open air market for not only child pornography, but for drugs, for guns, anything like that. So, Roger's training. It says up here a 2-week training. Really, that is misleading. The 2-week training is for guys like me, the handler. So watch the dog, learn how to work the dog, watch the dog's indicators, watch the dog's signs, and just learn all about the dog. And it's nice because the dog comes trained, obviously, from the trainer, but the handler's job is to continue on that training, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Like I said earlier, I'm a deputy prosecutor. Most of the dog handlers of these 250 dogs around the world are ICAC detectives. They are detectives who are tasked with sex crimes and things of that nature. So I'm definitely an anomaly and got very lucky to have a dog.
We do have a certification like
Regular street bite dogs who are apprehension as well as drug dogs.
we do a certification every year, and
It's multiple rooms with several devices. We have to find those devices within the time limit. We've also started using air tags as part of the certification. Air tags are readily available now. They're inexpensive. We've had lots of cases where air tags have either been put on a piece of property or on a vehicle. Roger can source that odor of those air tags.
here's just some brief stats. So 50 states supported by these canines. You can read them, but the stat that really seems realistic to me and is something that, in my personal experience, I would say Roger's find rate is
About 85%. Does he find something every time? No. Does he find something really hidden every time? No. But he does do a great job of coming in after CSIs and detectives have searched that residence or that vehicle and making sure that we found everything, or at least that's always the goal, to get this material off the street as well as we can.
All right, here's some of the countries and states that have dogs. Not all the states have dogs, but at least the surrounding states do. And then some of the countries that you probably wouldn't think of: Malaysia, Taiwan, Thailand.
A lot of those countries have a pretty significant reputation of human trafficking type behavior, so a dog there is certainly helpful.
Just some more stats. So these are from Our Rescue. Our Rescue is
It's an anti-human trafficking organization. They are worldwide. They're based out of Salt Lake City, and they sponsor 100 plus of these dogs. They pay for all his food. They pay for leashes, collars, vet bills, all that stuff, and they'll do it for the remainder of his life.
okay. How does Roger do what he does?
So we talked about the chemical. The chemical that he's sourcing, that Tippecanoe, is a chemical that he is imprinted on as a puppy. And I don't know exactly how Todd Jordan does it. He doesn't tell me, but I can guess. Essentially, he's doing what he does with his arson dogs and what other law enforcement do with their drug dogs. They are associating that odor that the dog is working for, attempting to locate, with a food reward. So a Belgian Malinois, a German Shepherd, that type of dog is a dog that is a prey drive dog. Their ultimate reward is biting a human being. Oftentimes they don't get to do that, but they get a ball when they alert and are rewarded. They are reinforced with that prey drive. Roger, being a yellow Labrador Retriever, he's very different than that. I don't think would ever bite a human. His reward and his drive is food. He's very food motivated. I could give him 10 cups of food and he would eat another 10. But really, he just gets 3 a day, and he only gets food when he's working. So what I'll do, and I've done it already, I've hidden some devices around, and I have a pouch of food that I'll put on my belt, and then I will work Roger around the room. When he locates a device, he does this alert, which is a sit. I'll then ask him to show me, and then he'll try to bump that device or get as close to that device as he can. Then he'll get rewarded with food. So he's paid with food as close to that device as I can get, and that reinforces that food odor connection.
All right. We talked a little bit about usage, child exploitation cases, other types of occurrences or crimes or searches. We talked about that.
Community outreach and therapy dog. I am in charge of deputy prosecutor assigned to Superior Court 3, which is our juvenile court in Tippecanoe County. Oftentimes I have juvenile victims. Whenever I have a juvenile victim who comes in for a witness conference, I always ask them, do they like dogs? More often than not they do, and I'll bring Roger in, and he will exactly what he's doing right now, what he was doing with Chief Page. He'll just go over and sit by him. Now, I don't think Chief Page needed any therapy, maybe he did, but it is very, very helpful when I bring that dog in, especially with a kid who doesn't want to be there, they're afraid, they're nervous, all the emotions, to have that dog come sit just by the feet, just like that, and they can just pet that dog and interact with that dog while we conduct our interview.
All right, deployment environments, we talked a little bit about this.
The main thing is homes, and people often ask, well, don't they just go in and look at the police just go find the cell phones? Yes, they do, but these homes are frequently, not always, but frequently not like ours. We may have some clothes, some shoes on the floor, last night's outfit, whatever, a couple dishes in the sink. But any of the law enforcement guys in here know that some of these houses that you go into, they are absolutely filthy. I'm talking animal waste, food, clothing, piles and piles and piles of stuff, boxes stacked to the ceiling. It's never been cleaned, never been dusted, ever. And that is the environment that we go into a lot. And that's why it's so helpful to have a dog like this who can source that over to those devices, and we can either, one, make sure we didn't miss anything, or two, if it's a really cluttered or gross house, we'll put the dog in first and find areas of interest, and then we'll thoroughly search those areas. So here's some of his buddies. This is Canine Hunter on the right, and Canine Samson in the middle. Canine Hunter was with IMPD. He's with Boone County ICAC Task Force now, and then Samson is with IMPD. So oftentimes when we do these search warrants, the dogs do get tired, especially if it's a bigger house or if it's hot out, and we'll run multiple dogs. Here's something interesting that I never knew before I started working with these dogs. So there's Roger in the background there. In the foreground, there's a black lab that looks exactly like him. That's actually his litter mate. I had no idea that you had multiple different colored dogs in the same litter. His litter mate there is Rocket. He's the same dog with the phone in his mouth. And then the other dog is his half brother. So he has a full family of dogs that do the same thing that he does. People frequently ask me, why do they use labs? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Anyone have any experience with a lab? So certain dogs, and it doesn't really matter the breed, even a Malinois or something like that, a police dog, they may be a little bit skittish about certain things. So if you had a dog jump up on a table or jump up on here and stuff, was strewn in different directions, makes a lot of noise, things move around, the dog might not like that. He might be a little bit nervous about that, he might be scared, and he might not go back over to this place again. Same thing if you put a dog into a crawl space or something like that. Some dogs are just not going to do it. Labs have temperaments, they're very friendly, but they're also very, I don't necessarily know the correct word, but they're not skittish. They're not timid, but they're also not aggressive. So they will jump on that table. They will stick their head in that crawl space. They will jump in that crawl space. So that is one of the benefits of the lab for this purpose. All right, here we are at the White County Jail. This is right after I got Roger. This is one of my colleagues, Captain Matt C. from Grant County with Canine Jeff. We didn't find any devices, but we did hopefully ensure that there weren't any devices involved. Here's Roger reading his code book. He comes to the office with me every single day. He comes home with me. He has his own unmarked car. So it's pretty cool that your best buddy canine partner come with you all the time. All right, here's an example. I think that's the picture. An example of what Roger does when he alerts. So we have the cannon in front of the Tippecanoe County Courthouse. It has an air tag in the muzzle. When Roger finds a device, he's going to sit, and then he's going to point his nose up to that device and try to get to that device. Here's around the fountain. We also use the fountain when it's not been used by homeless people for whatever purpose and they have to drain it. We'll use that. We'll throw a phone in there. If you can't find a phone, he can't find a phone at the bottom of the lake, but he can find a phone in a couple inches of water. Here he is in his cage car, and then the picture on the right is about
example, yes, on the left, that is exactly what we think it is in those Taco Bell cups or whatever. And then just
nasty.
that's the one right there. So here it is out front of a house. We always take a photograph out front, just so I can keep for our records. And here's just another example of what Roger can do in the type of environments he works in. So on the left there, that is a drawer in the living room.
There is a flash drive right there. A lot of these predators, they want to have their material, their illegal material, readily accessible. They consume it frequently. They also do not want to store it on the cloud and things like that because it will get flagged and a tip will be generated. So they frequently keep them on flash drives. Now, we likely would have found that flash drive because this was a pretty nasty house. We put Roger in right off the bat. He went right over that drawer and alerted and found that flash drive. We were able to plug it into the mobile crime unit, and it had illegal material on it, so that individual could be arrested right then and there.
Here's another example, just stuff. That's probably never been cleaned. How long would it take Chief Page and I to search that area? Probably not too long to thoroughly search it and remove all that stuff. And remember, the rest of the house looks like that too, so there's just stuff everywhere. So Roger went over there, and in the back he found an item. Just an example, there's that. If you look underneath the window, there's a keyboard with an ashtray on top of it. That's where that flash drive was found, really before we even started the search. Here's Roger with all the items he located in that house. We always take a picture like that and clean afterwards. Here he is in a gun safe.
So that odor is in a lot of different things, mostly things with flash storage, but it is in things that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So he kept going into that gun safe and alerting, and we moved all the backing and the carpet and all that to see if there was a device. Didn't find anything. I think about that a lot. Was there something in there? But he also does alert on red dot sites and things of that nature because they do have some storage in them. So it could have been that.
Sometimes we just don't know. All right, here's another example. This is an example from a fatal crash where Sheriff's Department, Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Department went out and
Looked for a phone that was thrown from a vehicle. It was a
single occupant crash
going about 137 miles an hour.
in that fence right there. It hit a telephone pole and rolled, and there's a debris field.
So they looked for it. The family of the driver went out and looked for it, and they called me and said, "Hey, do you mind bringing your dog out?"
Sure,
I always will bring my dog out, especially with an opportunity like that where we know that there's a phone out there.
so we went out there and we worked for about 20 minutes. I was ready to put it back in the car, get a little break,
And he started digging, and he found that phone.
right there, and the deputy out with literally was able to capture it. I don't know how many of you can see it, but it's right above, right in front of his paws. All right, here he is in his cage car. He
Does his job, does his work, but a lot of times he's just a normal dog.
He plays with dog toys, and he's kind of rewarded after he's wet here. We went to
The pet store, washed him after a really dirty search warrant, and he got a new toy.
so also community events.
Things like this. This is him
With
at
LPD's trunk or treat with
some llamas.
here he is with a bunch of the underdogs. So if you see most of them are labs, there's a couple well, they're
Golden retrievers. They're golden retriever mixes. Same sort of temperament where they're not aggressive, but they're also not timid. They're very food motivated. They also want to please their human.
and there is a helicopter behind him because we wanted to get his dog accustomed to the helicopter. Roger's never been on a helicopter, but that has happened where his dogs had to be helicoptered up to Lake County to assist with the search. So here's a cartoon that my paralegal made. She's a very talented graphic designer.
Roger has become a bit of a mascot for our office, so he's always around.
folks like these ladies have to do some pretty intense stuff at work pretty frequently, have to look at some very horrible images and have to read about a lot of horrible stuff. So having a dog like Roger that you can just go visit with is very helpful for the mental health of our entire office. All right, here's some of his buddies. This is 5 out of 7 of the Indiana dogs. We were down in Indianapolis doing some training. And when it comes down to it, Roger's just a regular dog. There he is on a boat doing dog things with my personal dog. And there he is eating ice cubes. Doesn't get any treats, doesn't get any human food, but he does get ice cubes and he absolutely loves ice cubes. So if you're interested in learning a little more about Roger, there's some websites here. We have some info on the Tippecanoe website. We also have his trainer's website, and then All Rescue is his sponsor. There's a pretty in-depth documentary where a bunch of different handlers are interviewed and talking in depth about what these dogs do. Any questions about Roger, what he does? I always get some. No questions? Yes, sir. I am, yes. Yes. No questions, really. All right, so what I'm going to do is yeah, so if you think about dogs and how we train dogs, they train dogs to smell certain cancers and certain viruses. So I mean, that's about as small as it gets, right? This is small. The odor is smaller than drug odor, right? We need small certain drugs. But yes, he's able to source that odor in water, especially water that's, if it's a flowing stream, and you work them into the stream, just like when you're working a dog, you work them into the wind, so then you can catch that odor flowing downstream, flowing from the wind. So it's similar to that. It's not going to work in 20 feet of water, but a couple feet of water at the most, something creek, a pond, something like that is going to work. The way I explain the odor, so the odor of that TPPO, if you've ever been to a Halloween party and seen a punch bowl with dry ice in it, right? We know what we're talking about. So you put the dry ice block in the punch bowl, carbon dioxide flows down over the table, and eventually ends up on the floor. That is what the off-gassing of that chemical is doing when the device is in. It's heavier than air, it's falling down, and it's cooling. That's what they'll be sourcing. So what I'm going to do now, he knows what's up, because we do this at least twice a day, every single day. So I'll put the pouch on my belt. He's already started to start walking around. If this was a room in a house, I would let him get accustomed, because there's going to be popcorn, there's going to be food, there's going to be animal waste, there's going to be all sorts of stuff. So right now, I'm just going to start targeting him around, because he's already accustomed to this. Great work. So if you guys saw, if you heard that, he's moving air in and out of his nose. He literally put his nose to that drawer, suctioned his nose to the drawer. See? Show me. Yes. So then he tried to bump the device, and then he gets rewarded with his food over the device. Target. Yes, good boy. So he's literally trying to get to that device, and in my experience, the bigger the device, the easier it's going to be for him. This is like a hiding box with an air tag in there. Show me. Show me. Yes. Go. Oh. can't get Kane right over that device to reinforce his connection with the odor and the food. Now he's just looking for straight middle. Let's work, let's work. So he's an advanced enough dog, I don't necessarily have to target him around to every single spot on the couch. Normally he'll get there himself. Tiki. Show me. Yes. Good boy. Good boy. Going. So right here's a good example. He knows he's in odor, but he's not sure exactly where it is, but he knows it's up. Is that what is falling down? See, go. See. See. Show me. Yes. Good boy. Good boy. Oh, yeah. Lucky boy. So that's kind of what Roger does, a little bit about him. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything you guys got. Yes, sir.
Yeah, with the devices that he's looking for, if the device has not been like on for a long time or is cold, does it still have that TPPO odor, or is it just less of an odor?
I think in general, it's about the same. I have found that a device that's warm is going to off-gas more of that. So say there's a device laying, like a phone, laying in a field and it's hot outside, he's going to be able to find that a lot easier. Devices that are burned or broken or waterlogged, he's still a little alert on them. He had a canine in New Hampshire that was tasked with finding 2 phones. The 2 phones were found, and they were found with 2 dead bodies, their owners' bodies, that had been burned and buried in shallow graves. Even a phone that's been burned, and we've done some scenarios kind of mimic that, where a phone's been burned and buried, he's able to source that over as well. But in general, anything that is on or is newer seems to be something that's easier to do.
And as a general rule, when you are deploying a dog, do you like keep your own phone and other people's phones away? And
So I do. It's almost like, and I was just down at the training center. We had 22 new handlers that just started on Monday. So I was just down there helping and getting to work with my dog. I did suggest that some of the new handlers, one of them had a dirt tag on their dog's collar. So that's probably not a good idea, because that dog, when he's searching, he's going to be throwing odor everywhere. I always take my phone and my keys and my wallet, because he will alert on the chips in your credit cards or essentially SIM cards. I always take it off. But when there's a bunch of officers around and there's body cams, there's radios, they all have phones in their pockets, I'll ask them to kind of clear out of the room. I always let them watch because they're interested in watching. But I'll let that room settle and get that odor from all those devices that they bring in
thank you.
Have you done any presentations at schools before?
Yes, we've done several within our
And so how does the presentation you're doing tonight with Roger look in the school setting, like with Wilmer?
Yeah, so it's gonna look similar. I'm not gonna use the term child pornography or explain what C statement is. I'm gonna say illegal things that are something like that. But other than that, it's kind of gonna be and pretty informal. kids want to ask questions throughout, we'll define with that. It's gonna be, I don't wanna say dumbed down version of it, but, you know, it's gonna be a little more tailored towards, depending on the age of the kids.
What would be a scenario where Roger might be used in the school?
So, one of my colleagues, from Vigo County, we just did a training, and she commented that her dog has found babes. What do you mean your dog's found babes? So she is a school resource officer, so she does use her dog to find babes. I don't, I think it kind of minimizes the whole thing of it, but I understand in her situation, where she would. So that, I mean, that's an example of what you can use it for here. In terms of actually locating electronic devices within a school setting for kids, not necessarily. We have been to schools. I did a search warrant up in Lake County with the Department of Homeland Security, and we searched a seminary, so like students there, adult students, but we searched one of their faculty's offices. So something like, a scenario like that. Anyone else have anything?
Do you ever smell like a residual, where you had devices, smell any of that ever?
So he does. When we were in, we searched the jail, Roy County Jail the other day, and they have devices that we call them chirps. Basically, they're iPads, and iPhones, and little boxes. We monitor them, right? They had just pulled those from the cells like 30 minutes before we searched. So he was alerting a lot on the top of beds where those chirps likely were. A lot of times when we do a search warrant, detectives, CSIs will go in, gather all the electronics, they'll placard them, take photographs, and then they'll queue them all up to pack. And they may set them on a couch or something. He'll go right over that couch and alert because there's been all sorts of stuff. So yeah, sometimes I don't really say false alerts because sometimes you just don't know. And again, he is not like a street dog, where a street dog who is imprinted on drug odor, they are generating probable cause to search a vehicle based on their odor. Roger doesn't do that, right? He's going to alert on vehicles because there's a central system. We can pinpoint the stuff in the vehicle, but the areas that we search, we either have permission or we have a search warrant to either searching. He's not generating probable